Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are really cracking open the playbook for modern leadership because let's face it, the old model, leading purely by authority, is just, well, losing its grip fast. Leaders now, they're juggling decentralized teams, relentless change, and maybe most critically, this rising tide of disengagement. So our mission in this deep dive is to pinpoint that exact blend, the mix of emotional insight and hard data that really turns a struggling manager into an inspiring, successful leader for today.
Yeah, and we really have to start, I think, by accepting the sheer stakes involved here. I mean, the research is pretty clear. A leader operating with low emotional intelligence, they're not just, ineffective.
They're actively causing harm.
Exactly. They're actively draining the organization's reserves long term. We're talking real costs, burnout, people leaving, performance just stuck in neutral. This isn't about just being like nice or socially smooth. It's about core competence now. To succeed today, you absolutely have to master emotional intelligence, or EI. That's the ability to leverage empathy, self-awareness, and real emotional insight.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If EI is really the absolute non-negotiable core, what actually makes it up? What are the components? And maybe more importantly, why is it so mandatory right now, especially with all the hybrid and remote work?
It's mandatory because the whole game has changed fundamentally. Think about leadership. Last century, it was very hierarchical, wasn't it?
Yeah, top-down commands.
Right. Issuing orders, enforcing compliance, driving results mostly through pressure. And look, that approach kind of worked when everyone was in the same building, visibility was high.
It was definitely focused more on the task, maybe less on the actual person doing the task.
Precisely. Modern leadership has to pivot. It's got to focus on the people just as much as the performance. It emphasizes empathy. And, this is crucial, building psychologically safe spaces. When your teams are spread out, you can't rely on just control anymore. You have to build connection, trust, a sense of shared purpose. And that takes leaders who actually model self-awareness and compassion.
Right. And when we look for a sort of blueprint for making this shift, Daniel Goleman's framework on EI comes up again and again. It really structures what effective EI actually looks like in practice.
It absolutely does. And for leaders, there are these four key components, these pillars. We start internally with self-awareness. This is really about the capacity to recognize your own emotions, understand your internal state, and critically see how that state affects your thinking, your judgment, your actions.
Okay, so if a leader walks into a really tense quarterly review meeting, but they're already stressed about some other deadline, self-awareness is catching that internal pressure before they start snapping at people.
Exactly that. Without it, you're just reacting on autopilot. Which leads right into the second component, self-management, or sometimes called self-regulation. This is about controlling or redirecting those disruptive emotions, those impulses. So instead of reacting to the stress by snapping, the leader takes a breath, regulates, and chooses a more adaptable, more thoughtful response.
Makes sense. Master the internal landscape first, then you move outward.
Exactly. Which brings us to social awareness. For leaders, this is basically empathy put into action, understanding, and importantly, genuinely considering other people's emotions, their perspectives, even their unspoken needs. Asking, are they confused? Are they feeling overwhelmed right now?
Which is particularly tough to gauge when all you're seeing is maybe a little square on a Zoom screen.
It really is. And that brings us to the final, critical piece. Relationship management. This is all about building and maintaining those healthy, effective relationships. It means communicating really well, inspiring others, and, crucially, managing conflict proactively when it pops up.
And the payoff here sounds massive. Leaders who are skilled in EI, they can handle tricky team situations better. They build teamwork based on trust, not just orders. And they motivate people because their teams genuinely feel understood, valued, and inspired to bring their best work, not just, obligated. But as you mentioned earlier, even the best intuition can get kind of blinded by how we work now. You called it the modern leadership visibility crisis. What exactly makes today's environment so opaque, even for leaders trying to be empathetic?
Well, the crisis really stems from the sheer complexity and the speed of how work is evolving. You've got hybrid teams, global teams, incredibly diverse teams, often working asynchronously. This creates, frankly, a severe communication chasm and a real lack of what we could call emotional visibility.
Let's zero in on that lack of visibility. I mean, I know from my own experience, you can hide an awful lot behind a muted mic and a sort of default smiling profile picture.
Oh, absolutely. All those little signs of stress or confusion or maybe quiet disengagement that you just see in an office, the furrowed brow, the frustrated sigh, someone just leaning back, totally exhausted. That stuff gets filtered out by the technology now. You might only see someone for, 15 minutes in a video call once a week. You lose all that rich nuance of human interaction.
And the hybrid setup makes it even harder, doesn't it?
Mm.
Because you can end up with two different realities. People in the office get that sort of passive information exchange, the casual chats, while remote folks often only get the scheduled, very intentional communication.
And the data backs this up. It creates proximity bias, emotional intent, tone. It gets lost across screens really easily. That quick text message from a manager. It might land as passive-aggressive to someone working remotely, even if the manager was just, in a rush between meetings.
Wow. Okay, and then you layer cultural diversity on top of that. Interpreting emotional signals is already tricky. Trying to do it across different cultural norms without clear data sounds almost impossible.
It's a huge challenge for maintaining trust. Think about high context versus low context cultures. In one culture, silence might signal respect, deep thought. In another, it could signal disengagement or even disagreement. So if a leader isn't aware of that difference, they might label a thoughtful, quiet contributor as unengaged just because they're misreading the signals based on their own cultural norms.
Yeah, okay, this really sounds like a classic case where good old human intuition, even at its best, needs a reliable co-pilot. So here's where it gets really interesting. How exactly is AI starting to step in and help bridge this pretty profound emotional visibility gap? We're talking about moving beyond just gut feeling to a balance, right? Human empathy plus concrete data-driven insights.
That's precisely the core transformation. AI essentially takes all that messy, unstructured data of human interaction, our recorded meetings, emails, Slack messages, even our tone of voice, and turns it into structured, usable feedback. So instead of relying purely on that gut feel, leaders start getting real-time, measurable evidence about the emotional climate of their teams.
So the tech is sort of amplifying the leader's ability to be empathetic, not replacing it. But I have to ask the obvious question. Doesn't this risk creating a kind of performance culture where leaders just try to game the AI score? Doesn't monitoring, even if it's meant well, eventually erode trust?
That's a really fundamental question, and it's important. The way this is framed and the way it works best is seeing AI as a tool for self-improvement, not surveillance. The key is transparency. If leaders use these insights to genuinely understand their own blind spots, and then they address those authentically, that actually builds trust. It doesn't break it. The technology is really designed to strengthen human leadership in, I'd say, three crucial ways.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
First, it's about building awareness. The AI analyzes team communication, those emotional cues, and gives objective data back to the leader. It shows how their behavior, maybe their tone, their impatience, how clear they were, directly impacts team morale and engagement. Second, it drives growth. It doesn't just show what happened, like stress went up here. It helps understand why emotions might have shifted. And crucially, it can suggest specific, emotionally intelligent ways to respond to build connection. So, for example, if the data shows frustration spiked after a new policy was announced, the AI might suggest some follow-up questions for the leader to ask, focus purely on validating feelings and active listening.
Okay, awareness, growth. And the third way sounds like it shifts the leader from always reacting to being more predictive.
Exactly. That's the proactive element. By spotting those early, subtle indicators of stress or disengagement, maybe a consistent drop in positive language, or someone's speech rate increasing under pressure, AI lets leaders intervene early. They can address a potential issue before it snowballs into burnout or, someone handing in their notice. That proactive capacity is just invaluable.
Let's talk a bit more about the AI turning the lens back on the leader themselves, this idea of self-analysis. Because, let's be honest, self-reflection is hard. We're often our own worst critics, or maybe just too busy running around to notice our own patterns.
Yeah, self-analysis is where the AI can act almost like a non-judgmental coach. Many leaders genuinely believe they came across as calm and clear, but the data might reveal they actually sounded impatient, or maybe their voice conveyed stress they didn't even realize. The AI can track these emotional patterns over weeks or months, providing objective evidence that's hard to ignore.
So it could flag something like, hey, every time you discuss budgets, the tension level in your voice spikes, or maybe you tend to interrupt people much more frequently in afternoon meetings compared to morning ones.
Precisely those kinds of patterns. It highlights specific moments where the leader might sound stressed or impatient or maybe just unclear. And this feedback forces that really critical pause for reflection. Okay, how did I come across there? Or why did my reaction to that feedback seem to shut the team down instantly? Getting this objective data helps leaders develop that foundational self-awareness and self-regulation we talked about from Goleman's model. They learn to manage their own internal state much more effectively for the benefit of everyone.
This is really fascinating because we're moving past abstract ideas into really concrete, measurable insights. So what are the specific tools? What are these, psychologically validated instruments that give trainers and leaders this kind of deep, emotion-backed analysis?
Right, these aren't just basic sentiment analysis tools. They're sophisticated systems, often grounded in psychological theory, which is key for credibility. One of the most comprehensive is multimodal emotion analysis. This system analyzes audio, video, and text simultaneously. It's measuring everything from, say, vocal pitch and speech rate to facial microexpressions and word choice.
Wow. So it's not just hearing what you said, but analyzing how you said it
Yeah.
and what your face and body were doing at the same time?
Exactly. It can reveal subtle mismatches. For instance, a leader might think they're sounding excited, but their tone might be high-pitched, and they might be using hedging language. The AI could flag that, suggesting it came across as nervous confusion rather than confident optimism. That immediate feedback is gold for self-awareness.
Okay. And for looking at group dynamics, how do you measure things like conversational balance or engagement levels across a team?
That's where speaker diarization plus emotion mapping comes in. Diarization basically figures out who spoke when. It creates a timeline of the conversation, turn by turn. When you pair that with emotion mapping, analyzing the emotional tone of each speaker's contribution, it lets trainers or leaders review group sessions and see very clearly the tone, the balance of participation, levels of engagement among different team members.
I can immediately see the power in that. Imagine a leader reviewing a meeting, recording, and the diarization map clearly shows they interrupted, say, their female colleagues 4 times more often than their male colleagues, or that the remote participants barely spoke, and when they did, it was with very low positive valence. That's undeniable, actionable insight right there, an aha moment.
Absolutely. Then you have more visual tools, like the valence arousal emotion graph. Think of this as like an emotional GPS for a conversation or a meeting. Valence maps the emotional tone on a spectrum from positive to negative. Arousal maps the energy level from calm or subdued up to intense or activated.
Got it. So a really heated argument would probably land high on arousal, lots of energy, but low on valence negative tone. Whereas a really engaged, motivated brainstorming session might be high arousal, high valence, positive energy.
Exactly right. It lets you track the emotional journey of the group visually. You can pinpoint triggers that cause shifts or moments where things really clicked and energy was high and positive.
Now, you mentioned linking this back to established psychological models, which sounds crucial for scientific validity. Specifically, you mentioned personality traits analysis based on the ocean model. Maybe quickly define ocean for us. It sounds a bit like jargon otherwise.
Sure, happy to. The ocean model is probably the most widely accepted framework in psychology for describing the core dimensions of personality. OCEAN is an acronym. O is for openness, how open you are to new experiences and ideas. C is conscientiousness, how organized, dependable, disciplined you are. E is extroversion, your level of sociability, assertiveness, energy drawn from interaction. A is agreeableness, how cooperative, trusting, compassionate you tend to be. And N is neuroticism, which reflects emotional stability, essentially how prone you are to negative emotions like anxiety or stress.
Okay, the big 5 traits.
Yeah.
And the AI uses the sort of psychological tone of communication to assess these.
Yes, that's the idea. It analyzes the way people communicate their word choices, sentence structure, vocal patterns, not just what they say, to get a sense of these underlying traits. This allows trainers, for example, to track progress over time. If a leader is specifically working on, say, reducing their neuroticism, reacting less anxiously in tense situations, the AI can provide objective data points showing if their communication patterns are actually shifting in that direction post-training.
Right. And finally, making sense of all this potentially complex data, turning into something you can actually use easily. That sounds like the job of the AI Insights feature.
Yeah, this is really the user-friendly interface layer on top of all the complex analysis. It lets leaders or trainers ask direct questions in natural language. Things like, when was stress highest among the marketing team last week? Or, what was the most positive moment in our Q3 kickoff meeting? This feature translates all those graphs and multimodal data streams into clear, focused answers, highlighting key learning moments and suggesting actionable coaching recommendations.
Okay, so this whole approach really emphasizes that the insights being generated aren't just tech wizardry. They're grounded in solid psychological theory. That ensures the coaching recommendations are actually credible, targeted, and scientifically supported.
Precisely. It's that powerful combination of human psychology and the ability of AI to analyze massive amounts of interaction data. It gives leaders confidence that the feedback and advice they're getting isn't just guesswork, it's based on evidence.
So if we pull all this together, the central takeaway for any leader listening seems crystal clear. The future of great leadership isn't about choosing between technology and empathy. It's not an either. It's really about blending them, merging them into this unified approach. AI doesn't replace emotional intelligence. It looks like it dramatically enhances it, giving it structure, data, and maybe even accountability.
Absolutely. By combining those essential soft skills, intuition, compassion, connection with the hard data of emotional insights from AI, leaders gain this much needed clarity. Clarity on their team's real feelings, their communication dynamics, their growth areas. Leaders who embrace these AI-powered emotional insights, they're going to be the ones who successfully build and sustain trust, inclusion, and genuine psychological safety, even when their teams are spread out across hybrid or fully remote setups.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Well, for decades, we've mostly treated technology as a tool for efficiency, right? Automation, speed. It feels like the next generation of truly exceptional leaders will start to redefine that relationship. They'll see AI not just as a tool for getting things done faster, but as a genuine, objective partner in developing empathy and driving personal transformation, helping them lead not just with smarts, but with measurable, informed heart.